Hey there, everybody. Welcome to our review of Killing Eve Season 4, Episode 1. It's been a minute, everyone. I think actually it's been like, I don't know, over 700 days since we talked about this show.
It has been a long time since this show has been on. And this is a really good show, but it's also a very complicated show. There's a lot of different layers, a lot of different stories, a lot of different threads. So, it took a minute watching this premiere to be like, oh, right, I
Yeah.
needed kind of a refresher. It has been a while.
I had to do the whole, like, metaphorical magnifying glass just to see certain things at times. I saw who was in that car, Eve. I'm right there with you. We got so much to talk about here. We got Eve, we got Villanelle trying to, I guess, find her faith or whatever we call that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, before we go further, hit that subscribe button because we are here
Mhm.
talking all about Kill and Eve. We're breaking down these episodes, the characters, kind of our own feelings on where things are going to go from here.
Yeah, we're also covering some other shows here at the channel: Snowfall, Power Book 4 Force, Blacklist,
Yeah.
NCIS, and This Is Us. There's a lot going on here at the channel, but also follow us over on our Instagram at Matt and Jess TV. Okay, listen, we gotta start with the Eve and Villanelle of it
Yes.
all because when we last saw them, they had a really important conversation standing on that bridge where basically, Villanelle was like, am I a monster? She was sort of trying to, I guess, find herself, figure that was a big season for her, really trying to figure out who she is or if she's all bad or, has the potential to be good. And asking that question to Eve was, she really wanted some sort of feedback of like, no, no, don't worry, you're not a monster. And we saw some of that in this premiere too, where she was getting that validation. No, no, you're good, don't worry. And Eve's answer was very honest, where she was just like, listen, I think everybody has a monster inside of them. I have one, you have one. And then Villanelle made this comment, which feels like how it's all spiraled in this season, where she was like, I think my monster feeds your monster. And at that moment, Eve was kind of like, I don't really know what to do about it. Villanelle comes up with this idea: we're going to face away from each other, we're going to walk away from each other. So when we have this whole thing, then Villanelle is looking for something.
Yeah.
She wants to know that she's good. She's trying to figure it out. So what does she do? She joins the Christians and she decides that she's going to try to find God, and God will basically tell her if she's good or not.
This is going to be a recurring theme, but I love Villanelle. Villanelle is like one of my five favorite characters on TV. Like, she is so interesting and bizarre.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that so much of what I think about Villanelle kind of stems from her sort of being the person who will like go in front of the crowd and be like, I don't care what any of you think about me, when in reality, she cares about nothing other than what Eve thinks of her. And I think she is so desperate to show that she is more than a monster, that she has changed. And I think there's such an interesting question about whether or not Villanelle trying to find faith is entirely performative or not. But I feel like somewhere deep inside her, I think she wants a part of this to work. But at the same time, she wants to be able to go to Eve and be like, look how much I've changed. Come to my baptism. Here's a reserved seat for you. And that she's going to fully buy into it.
No, I agree. I don't think that it's performative. I think that it is a mix of two things. I think Villanelle, that question she asked on the bridge, am I a monster? And everything that happened to her last season, I think she really does want to know, am I purely
Yeah.
bad? Is there anything that's good in me? Because she sees good in Eve, where Eve is now starting to see less good in herself and more sort of, is she lost and she's on her own path. But I think there was that moment where Villanelle was in the bathroom and she was by herself and she was praying to God to kind of be like, please, just please let this be the answer for me, that there is good in me and you see good in me, and like, please let me find something else inside of me. But of course, she wants, the approval of Eve
Yeah.
because we saw at the end of last season, they were walking away. They both turned around.
Yeah.
Where I think Eve was kind of hoping it somewhere in her heart, as much as she loves Villanelle, that if Villanelle stays away from her, it won't feed her monster anymore. And she might be able to find her way back. But for Villanelle, I think she thinks if she can find the goodness in her, then Eve will accept her back.
I think that's exactly it. Like, I think she thinks that this will be the way to be accepted by Eve, and that this will also help Eve, and then Eve can get better, and then they can. I think she thinks that she can sort of like reverse this curse that she thinks that she has sort of put upon the two of them, and seeing every bit of how this unfolded, and just Villanelle's desperation, the baptism scene. There is like so many awesome things about this. I love the shot of her standing there with the wings behind her, how that just sort of looked. I loved her screaming, just dunk me at one point. Like, no one has ever wanted to be dunked as quickly as Villain. This was like we've heard of a shotgun wedding. This was a shotgun baptism that we saw in this episode.
No, at that point, she just wanted to have that cleansing feeling so that she
Yes.
could go to Eve. And then we had this confrontation where she was like, hey, you didn't come to my baptism. I've
Yeah.
gotten it done. I'm good now. You can see it. Right, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Where Eve was just on the other side of it, kind of like, have you forgotten everything that we talked about on that bridge?
Yeah.
How your monster feeds my monster. And if you really changed and you really cared to let me get better, you wouldn't be here. And
Yeah.
then we saw this scene that reminded me so much of The Handmaid's Tale from last season. A little bit of spoilers, so if you haven't seen it, okay,
right.
so there was this moment where Serena Joy ends up getting down on her knees in front of June, asking for forgiveness, asking for sort of something between them so that there's just some sort of acceptance of what she's done. And June just yells in her face, and there's nothing there. And we had a very similar scene where Villanelle gets down on her knees, and Eve is just like, nah.
Yeah.
You needed to not come here. And she ends up with a slap in her face.
All of this just sort of suggested to me, all right. So Villanelle, you are so desperate for what you want that you aren't taking into consideration what Eve wants, and instead you're doing, what you think Eve will want based on how you have wanted to change. And it is like this weird little twisted mind game that she's sort of set up in her head. And I think her reaction to all of this is, Villanelle is going to be a big surprise to everyone out there who's watched 3 seasons of Killing Eve. She has a bit of a rage problem. And so she is very upset about this. And so this is where we get to the drowning, as we can call it. But she didn't actually kill her. She's better, guys. She only slightly almost murdered her.
You know what? I know that was like a big moment that was sort of like, oh, a little bit better.
Yeah.
When she's on the ground being like, oh my God, I actually didn't kill you. But to be honest, I actually think that was a really big revelation for Villanelle, where she's like, she's killing this woman, and then she's like, oh, no, I can actually get control over myself. Yes, I was out of control in this moment, but I got control of myself before it got to the death part of it, and I'm actually able to stop it. And I think going into this season that now she knows that she is capable of stopping it. I was like, okay, that is a good moment for her. However, when she goes back to the house and she's kind of like, give me a sign, and she sort of ends up, well, she was at the church, give me a sign, ends up back at home kind of like, okay, what is the deal, walks into the living room and sees Jesus, which is just herself. I was like, oh no, okay, you know what, we're still in this spot where Villanelle's, greatest hero or person who's gonna save her is herself. So, take it for what you're going to take it for. I don't think she was ever really that deep into religion in the first place. I'm taking it as a moment where she realizes that the only person that can really save herself is herself. She has to be responsible for herself.
Killing Eve writers. Please give us Villanelle Jesus for at least like another 2, 3 episodes, just for the costume alone of what was going. I want to know what Jodie's reaction was when they went to her and said, "Okay, we need you to put this on, and we need you to play Jesus at the end of this episode, so that of course." Villanelle's Jesus would look just like Villanelle. Like, this is it's the most obvious thing in the world, and yet I was completely and utterly delighted by it, even if this entire thing is probably horrendously sacrilegious.
I'm just hoping that it really meant, this is what I'm taking away from it. You guys let me know if you took something else. I'm taking it that Villanelle realizes that she's her own savior and that she's kind of done with this storyline, because this storyline felt very much purposeful, which is that she wanted to find out she was good, and she wanted to prove to Eve that she was good, even though Eve is like, well, okay, that's great that you've changed, but so have I.
I'm just happy that there was some substance to this, because when we saw, because they put out these photos of Villanelle, wearing the garb and all that, I was worried that this was going to be just sort of like a repeat of the clown photos from last season, where it's just another assassin plot or something like that. But there's a lot of substance that came from this, and now we get to see where it evolves.
Okay, so with Eve and where she is, I mean, we saw her at the beginning show up at Constantine's work. I guess he's in office now. Shoot him in the hand. She's still trying to find out information about the 12. There was something that she said in this scene that I was like, oh no. I've been feeling like this is the last season, obviously, and I've been feeling that there's only really one way this is going to end for her and Villanelle, and that is going to be that they are not going to make it out of this alive. They're not. No. I don't think that they're going to, kill themselves or anything like that, like a Romeo and Juliet or something. I don't think they're going to make it out of this alive with the amount of risks that they take and all the killings that they do and all the things they're doing. Like, I just think it's not going to work out for them. And then she said something at that point as well that made me be like, oh, they're kind of foreshadowing it anyways, where Constantine was kind of like, you're still going after the 12? Like, you're going to end up dead. And she was kind of like, yeah, I hope so, kind of thing. I was just like, oh, okay.
I kind of think of this as sort of Villanelle and Eve are driving this car, and they're getting closer and closer to the cliff, and I think we're gonna sort of
like
see
a Thelma and Louise.
I think we're Thelma and Louise at the end of this, where they're not maybe not literally, but I could see they're gonna be in there, and then whether it's Helena, whether it's somebody else in the 12, that they're gonna get somebody else in the car, and they're gonna drive off the cliff, meaning that they're going to probably take themselves down, but I think they're gonna take down the 12 alongside them. And I think for Eve at this point in her life, that seems to be the number one thing that's driving her more so than protein shakes or that dude's abs or like anything else. But this is her goal, and I think she's willing to sacrifice her life to make it happen.
Yeah, and she had a lead. Okay, this is where we're going to get into the funeral directing
of it
all.
Yes.
Okay, so for those of you who are new to the channel, my background, I went to college to be a funeral director, and I was an embalmer. I've embalmed hundreds of bodies. So when Eve was like, okay, I have this lead, and I think it's this female embalmer, that she might be someone who's being courted by Helen and is going to be brought into the 12 as the next assassin. And her reasoning for it was, well, she's okay with dead bodies. And if she's okay with dead bodies, then she must be okay with killing people. And I was like, whoa, okay. Listen, that is thin. Like, no assassin association came and offered me a job or anybody else working at the funeral home. I had actually thought, like, this is just my personal experience. Like, I think that people who are doctors or nurses or EMT or anyone that actually has somebody's life in their hands, they are, heroes and people that are able to help save lives, but they know that part of that profession is that they could lose lives.
Yeah.
As a funeral director, I'm not facing that. The people who I'm seeing are already dead. I don't have the strength in me to deal with the possibility of losing somebody's life. And that takes like someone who is very strong. I am very soft. I can't do something like that. So I think that it was a bit of a stretch, because once someone's already passed away and they're on your table, it's not like you're okay with the action of somebody dying by something you've done or by your hands or whatever. So I was kind of like, stretch for me.
It was a stretch, especially given that some of Eve's theorizing here turns out to be correct, and that's sort of where.
Well, it had to be correct. Like, even as it was playing out, I'm like, well, obviously this woman is got to be getting courted by Helen, or like, what's the point of us watching this?
It's true. I mean, it was all a little bit predictable. Granted, I did love the chase scene. I thought that was very compelling at the end.
It was good.
And then seeing her in that back window of the car, I nearly lost it at that. But the first time I watched it, admittedly, I didn't catch it. And so I had to go back and see it again. I was like, oh, this is why this story matters so much.
No, it was great. And it was really good that it was in the premiere. Like, they are not stretching us out like a lot of other shows do with stuff like that, to be like, oh, let's have some build up. No, here she is, end of the episode, here you go, we're all buckled in for the ride.
And I think I saw something a while back that said that the actress plays Helen's going to be a series regular or something like that. So it's like, obviously we're going to get a lot more of her, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to see her in every episode or something like that. This was great.
Okay, so we also, in connection with the 12, we still have Carolyn. And if you've watched some of our other reviews, I am a fan of Carolyn. I know that not everybody is.
I am not a fan of Carolyn. I could do without her.
She's so fascinating. She's just odd. Her humor is odd. She's done a lot of stuff, and she's done a lot of, really underhanded stuff. I just think the character all around is wildly fascinating.
Okay. All right. Here's the thing, Carolyn fans who are out there. I've got my suit of armor on as I explain this. Killing Eve has Eve in the title. Villanelle is the assassin. These two characters are like 10 out of 10 uber fascinating characters. If Carolyn was on another show, maybe I would feel different, but it's just that because she is like, to me, I don't know, maybe like a 7 out of 10 character, you're putting her with 2 10s. I don't want to watch the 7. I want to watch the 2 10s. I want to watch the real heavyweights go at each other. And I just had, even with this episode, yes, Carolyn had a couple of interesting moments. Yes, seeing her demoted to attaché or whatever in Mallorca. Like, that did make me laugh. And there was a very evil part of me that was just like, oh, they're going to get rid of Carolyn and she's just going to go be stuck in Mallorca for the rest of the series.
No, she's such an important part of the series. I mean, last season we saw her make a pretty bold choice in that last scene where we had like Constantine and her and Eve and Villanelle and Paul all in the same room, where Paul's like, no, I'm good. I'm here for you. I'm just, part of MI6, just like you. And Constantine's like, no, he's part of the 12. And we know that Constantine has lied multiple times. He is not to be trusted, but because of her past relationship with him, they were lovers, that she ends up deciding in her gut that what Constantine is saying is true and that Paul is part of the 12. And then she calls it in as, he's taken his own life, and that's the way that it goes. So we end up having that kind of all come back this, in the premiere. She's of course fired. She's been fired for a little while, but she's still working to try to figure out what's going on with the 12. And it seems that, she's a little bit kind of getting blackmailed to be like, don't come back to this. Like, you've been fired. I have your job now. By the way, here's this picture of Paul, where I'm kind of like, well, she called it in. So, I mean, she knows. He's like, I know you did this. You don't know anything. Just move along. But we did end up seeing her back at the end of this episode talking to Vlad, who's like, hello, traitor. She did Vlad so dirty over time.
I do like Vlad. I will make that clear.
That's because you don't like Carolyn.
I like Vlad. I am here for you putting Carolyn. Okay, no. The thing with it is just that I appreciate that they at least got her out of her old station. They put her in a somewhere more interesting environment where she's having to do all these like ridiculous tasks that she thinks are clearly beneath her.
Mhm.
And I think there's something sort of fascinating to the idea of, okay, Carolyn, now if you want to actually do something about this, and I know you're still understandably in grief over Kenny and everything else,
Yep.
I get that fully. You're going to have to really, put on your bootstraps and try to figure out how to do this, because you aren't going to get any help. You're not going to get any assistance. You have to go like completely under the radar. This Carolyn, to me, is a tiny bit more interesting.
All right, get out. See yourself out.
I still want to see more of Eve, and I still want to see more. Because for as much as we all love the Eve and Villanelle relationship, what did they have? Like 2 minutes of screen time with each other in this episode?
Yeah, but that's how it is
know.
with this show. They are rarely together, and I think that's what makes it just the chemistry so off the charts when they are together. I will say that I am actually very glad that Carolyn's daughter is not in this. That was part of what, like, you guys know I really love Carolyn, but that storyline last season was the pits. It was a 0 out of 10. It needed to get wrapped up. It felt like they just didn't know what to do with Carolyn. And there is lots of story with her because she is just kind of evil in her own way. She is a traitor. She is willing to do whatever it takes to get whatever she wants, and it just doesn't matter who gets hurt. It's just rough. She's rough.
Okay, Carolyn, I'm going to make an offer to you here. Now that we don't have to deal with your daughter anymore, I'm going to say this. You have a chance to win me over the remaining episodes of this show. I need you to stay on this course. I need you to not bring up your daughter again. I need you to continue to have to balance these weirdo tasks in Majorca with what you're doing on the side.
Listen, I know that you are in the majority and I am in the minority of liking Carolyn's character. And it's just, I'm not saying like I like her, like I'm like, yeah, she's a good person. She's a terrible
she's
person.
Horrible.
I just like watching a character like that. Like, she's just not really like other characters I've seen on shows. She's very unique, and we watch a lot of TV. Yeah. And there's really no one like Carolyn out there, and I think that's why I like her. She's just fascinating and just a bad person.
Here's, in general, what I'm so excited for moving forward is that I know this is the final season. We can all be sad about that, but it feels like we are on like this real collision course at this point, where we have sort of the potential destruction of the 12 all the way out here, and we're seeing all these paths kind of slowly get to this, and eventually we're going to get to where they go boop, and then they go pff, and it all blows up, and I want to be there for that moment.
It's tough, because this is one of my all-time favorite shows. It is just so well done. The casting is great, the chemistry is great, the storytelling's great, but it's the final season. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, I'm really excited because it's going to be good. They're going to just be firing on all cylinders. It's the last season. They can get away with anything they want at this point.
Yeah.
But because it's the last season and I'm worried about Eve and Villanelle dying, I would be shocked if they just rode off into the sunset together, which is, I think, what a lot of us would like to see happen, because they do understand each other very well. But they are both extremely destructive to themselves and to each other. So yeah, it's great that it's back, but I'm worried that this finale is just going to murder me. Pun intended.
Everyone be ready. Be terrified and ready, but we are going to be here to break down all of Killing Eve moving forward. So hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of that. Thank you guys so much for being here with us to discuss the premiere. We'll see you here next time.